Today, I want to talk about a film that I consider to be the greatest horror movie of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. Set in the unforgiving, cold continent of Antarctica, the story revolves around a team of 12 American researchers who find that they are not alone. Something was frozen for millennia in the deep ancient ice, and now it has awoken. That is basically all I can say without giving too much of the plot away. So now I'll enter the part of my review where I'll analyze the movie in detail. Spoilers ahead. You have been warned. The main reasons why I love The Thing can be categorized into four main parts: characterization, storytelling, special effects, and suspense. Characterization. The movie does a great job of introducing the audience to 12 American researchers at the Antarctic station, who are all quite different from each other in terms of their strengths, weaknesses, and behaviors. One can learn a lot about an individual based on their interactions with other people. So let me introduce you to them. First, you have the biologists Blair and Fuchs. Blair is the first to understand the powers of the Thing after studying its remains. He discovers that the Thing has the power to imitate any form of life, and that it has the potential to take over his colleagues and the rest of mankind if it were to leave Antarctica. Thus, knowing that it could already have infected any one of his colleagues, he keeps his knowledge a secret and immediately goes into action to destroy any means of escape or communication to the outside world. After Blair, Fuchs is the next one to completely realize the danger of the Thing after reading through Blair's notes, learning that even after being frozen and burned, the cells of the Thing are still alive and active. The other scientific specialists are meteorologist George Bennings, who sees only the potential in winning a Nobel Prize for discovering the alien remains of the Thing, the find of the century, as he says. Physician Dr. Copper, who serves as the medical expert around the station, and the geologist Norris, who stays mostly to himself and will remain under most people's radar until, of course, he's thrust into the center of attention during his iconic Thing revelation scene. The remaining team is less scientific, but just as essential for surviving in these harsh conditions. You have the dog handler, Clark, who quickly becomes the most prominent suspect to be infected by the dog Thing. We have Windows, the radio operator, who's perhaps the character that openly shows the most fear, as we see in the scene of him racing to fetch a rifle when the suspicion of an imposter grows. We have Gary, who acts as the commander of the station. He's mostly quite level-headed and has the responsibility of carrying a firearm. But we also see him despair when he loses his friend Bennings to the Thing, and we see him understandably lose his cool demeanor after surviving the Thing's attack in the blood test scene.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
We see that he is also wise enough to understand when he can't be trusted anymore, and thus willingly surrenders his gun and his leadership position. We also have more rebellious figures with Mechanic Palmer and Knowles the cook. Palmer questions authority and provocatively smokes his joints as he lazes about, always listening to his Walkman. Knowles, maneuvering via roller skates, is carefree and blasts loud music during the night. He also isn't afraid to voice his complaints, such as when he finds dirty laundry in the kitchen trash bin. This, of course, is a subtle hint that the clothes of one of the characters was torn apart as they were infected by the Thing. And last but not least, we have our two rival alpha male characters, Childs, the mechanic in charge of the flamethrowers, and MacReady, the helicopter pilot. MacReady, played by Kurt Russell, is our main protagonist. In the opening scene, we see him play chess against a computer, and indeed, as the movie progresses, we see that his strength lies in strategy and logic. Instead of using a microscope as a scientist like Blair would, MacReady uses his logical deduction to analyze the thing's abilities and to understand its motives and limitations. He's very alert and determined, deciding immediately to grab the flamethrower to burn the dog thing. He systematically determines who's suspected of being infected and decides to tie them up and have them under surveillance. He locks up Blair to not cause further panic among the rest of the team. And once he realizes that someone is trying to frame him as being infected by planting his torn clothes as incriminating evidence, he doesn't take any chances, threatening to blow everyone up with dynamite or torching them with his flamethrower until he can confirm who he can trust. He shows that he means business, as needs to resort to shooting Clark when he tries to overthrow him. Psychoanalyzing the thing, MacReady deduces that it prefers to remain hidden, trying to attack someone when they're alone. And when he realizes that every part of the thing, even a single drop of blood, will fight to survive, he invents the blood test. And finally, when he realizes that the thing's last option is to hibernate in the cold by destroying the power generator, MacReady decides to lead a suicide mission, blowing up the station to keep the thing warm until they can find and eliminate it. Childs is skeptical of MacReady's blood test and doesn't initially want to believe that the Norwegians uncovered an alien.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
In general, he doesn't want to be bossed around by anyone else, as he himself is a man of agency. For example, when it seems that MacReady could be infected by the thing, he takes the role of a determined leader, resolving to not let MacReady inside or trying to burn him in order to save the rest of the team. He knows that MacReady could be innocent, but he understandably assesses that he can't risk letting in a potentially infected colleague.
Childs, what if we're wrong about him?
Why think we're wrong?
The authentic and serious way that the characters act around this claustrophobic situation makes the scenario incredibly believable and immersive. Because the characters are scared, the audience is scared. The interactions make the characters seem like real people with real fears, concerns, suspicions, and instincts to survive. Storytelling. The Thing's script is a masterpiece in the way it keeps the narrative flowing from scene to scene while constantly keeping the viewer at the edge of their seat. Each subtle piece of information gained, each interaction of the characters, or even unspoken parts that are left to be interpreted, all of these scenes factor into the rising tension. We begin the story in the middle of action, an action that lacks a reasonable explanation for the audience. A helicopter is chasing a dog through Antarctica, and the pilots are shooting at it. Why? The audience is left to speculate. The series of events continuously increases the stakes as well as the awareness of threat levels and immediate dangers for the characters. First, the main danger comes from the apparent attack of the crazy Norwegians, although one later understands that the Norwegians were just trying to kill the dog thing. MacReady and Dr. Copper seek out the Norwegian camp to find answers, and while they're gone, we see the dog thing silently lurking around, giving the audience an uneasy feeling of anticipation. At the Norwegian camp, they find only ruins, grisly corpses, a mysterious broken block of ice, and the mangled remains of some thing, which they transport back to analyze. These strange findings, along with the lack of any radio communication with the rest of the world, leads to a growing feeling of isolation and nervousness. They are alone, and trapped with this mystery, but the truly potent danger is finally revealed in the transformation of the dog thing. After burning the monstrosity, Blair does an autopsy and explains to the others that the thing, whatever it is, devours and then creates perfect imitations of its prey. As we see Blair ask Clark probing questions about the dog, we start to understand Blair's growing suspicion that the thing could have infected one of his colleagues before it was put in the dog kennel. Looking at the recovered Norwegian videotapes and investigating their finding of the thing's crashed spaceship, they realize the unbelievable origin of the thing. It is an extraterrestrial life form that was frozen in the ice for millennia. Despite some understandable skepticism among the team, we see that Blair observes how the thing's cells can infect and imitate other cells, and the audience is introduced to the concept that the thing can and already could have infected some of the American researchers. As we see the thing from the Norwegian camp begin to thaw, Fuchs meets with MacReady to explain Blair's findings that there is still cellular activity in the burned remains. The thing is not dead yet. The suspenseful calm bursts into action once more as Bennings is infected, confirming that the thing can devour and imitate other humans. Blair destroys vehicles, communication equipment, and kills the rest of the dogs to limit the spreading of the thing. But before he can start hacking away at anyone else, they lock Blair away in the tool shed for everyone's safety. Childs raises the question on everyone's mind.
If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
Dr. Copper proposes testing a mixture of blood samples with uncontaminated medical blood bags as a test, only to find that the blood bags have been destroyed. Panic ensues as everyone suspects everyone, and after a heated tussle, the main suspects, Gary, Dr. Copper, and Clark, are put under surveillance, and the leadership passes to MacReady. A snowstorm picks up, heightening the feeling of being trapped. When Fuchs disappears and a group goes out to search for him, they find MacReady's torn clothes. Has MacReady been infected, or is someone framing him to cause division among the team? The team takes no chances, preparing to kill MacReady, but as he threatens to blow everyone up with dynamite, the situation settles into a tense standoff, only to be suddenly interrupted by the monstrous Norris thing. Intense action is followed by nerve-wracking tension as MacReady conducts a blood test to see who is human, exposing Palmer as another thing in disguise. This leaves only Blair as the last possible suspect, and sure enough, as they go to the tool shed, they find that the thing had gotten to Blair and was beginning to build a spaceship to return home. With so few survivors left and no power, the suspense rises to a climax as the final hunt for the thing begins. After the final destruction of the thing, with a satisfying exclamation of MacReady,
Fuck you too!
it's quite fitting that the two characters with the strongest wills and personalities, Childs and MacReady, are the last two remaining survivors. And even though the suspicion remains, as one cannot verify whether the other is human or a thing, the two, instead of arguing or fighting with each other, are content to sit and wait as the flames flicker out. Special effects. Besides the awesome flamethrower and explosion scenes, the main highlight in the makeup and visual effects department is the creation of the thing itself. The special effects of Rob Bottin are some of the best practical work ever put to screen, whether it's the nightmare-inducing sculptures of morphing human and dog faces, or the impressive moving contraption of an actual monster mouth in the Norris thing's stomach. Yes, they actually built this machine that rips open the stomach tears off the arm prosthetics from a double-arm amputee wearing a Dr. Copper face mask, and rips off the head of the Thing while pyrotechnics are going off. Needless to say, the special effects team went all out to make the Thing really look and act like an alien that's traveled the universe, having learned to adapt to different life forms and using its previous forms to survive. When in danger, it can tear itself apart or grow extra limbs to scuttle away. The Thing seems incredibly alive thanks to dynamic effects like the tendrils of the dog thing or the Palmer thing sticking to the ceiling. But again, the ultimate display of special effect expertise lies in the perfect execution of the Norris Thing attack. Suspense. Despite the amazing special effects that still hold up to this day, over 40 years later, I don't deem The Thing as a great horror film only based on blood and gore. The quality of horror lies in its ability to create suspense. Besides the continuously rising stakes of the storyline, the building tension is primarily facilitated through scenes in which no words are spoken. The lifeless expanse of the Antarctic setting, walking through the ruins of the Norwegian base, the unnatural silence of the dog thing, the team gazing awestruck and speechless at the Thing's mangled remains. All of these scenes seem quite calm and uneventful out of context, but within the context of the story, with the knowledge that the audience increasingly gains about the threat of the Thing, these silent scenes create the ultimate feeling of suspense. The same is true for the scenes in which characters interact. While there are plenty of scenes in which they openly yell at and accuse each other, there are also plenty of scenes where their emotions are more subdued, and you hold your breath as the scene progresses, wondering who is the imposter, when will the Thing strike next, and who will survive.
I know I'm human. And if you were all these things, then you'd just attack me right now. So some of you are still human.
Horror wouldn't be the same without the sudden release of tension in the form of jump scares. And in this film, these jump scares are implemented so effectively by first diverting the audience's attention. For example, while Dr. Copper is trying to reanimate the unconscious Norris, MacReady diverts your attention, saying that someone framed him with the torn clothes. And just as we're focused on Clark, who has grabbed a scalpel to attack MacReady, the Norris Thing's stomach bursts open in a sudden horrific assault. As a second example, in the blood test scene, MacReady diverts your attention to Gary, saying that only Gary could have accessed the medical blood bags. And right when you're thinking about that, you're suddenly attacked by the Palmer Thing's blood. The sense of suspense is also greatly benefited by the soundtrack of Ennio Morricone, the same composer of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. However, in The Thing, instead of providing his usually bombastic orchestral compositions, the music here is very subtle and low-key. The ominous droning of synths and the tension-building beat create the perfect atmosphere for the film, giving the audience the feeling of something sinister lurking beneath the surface, waiting for its time to strike. From the opening helicopter scene to the final battle with the Thing, there's never a moment in the film without suspense. Even after the Thing seems to be ultimately defeated, the feeling of tension doesn't leave. As Childs and MacReady, the two lone survivors, find each other amongst the ruined research station, they still cannot definitively trust each other. Is one of them the Thing? Are they both human? Or are they both infected? They exchange drinks and smiles, but the tension remains. They sit and wait as night falls, and as the film fades to black, the darkest secret of Antarctica freezes over, doomed to remain hidden forever, or until the next expedition finds the remains. Maybe history is bound to repeat itself. First the Norwegians, then our 12 Americans, and what next? What was once burnt and frozen begins to thaw, and what should have remained lost is once again awoken.